Before I get started, I would like for you to go on Twitter and follow me on Twitter. As I mentioned before, YouTube is trying to get rid of my channel. YouTube thinks my videos are dangerous. Videos like the one I'm about to make now. So I encourage you to go to Twitter and follow me on Twitter at FearlessJ1111 and FearlessJ2008. I'm going to repeat that. FearlessJ1111 and FearlessJ2008. Follow me on Twitter just in case you decide to sign on to YouTube and my channel is no longer there. I watched a video today on Twitter, and it was by a Democratic lawmaker. Her name is Cori Bush. And she was speaking on reparations. Now, at one time, I've never really been against reparation. I just felt that it seemed impossible because of the number of the so-called Black Americans in this nation and how expensive it would be. And of course, there's a lot of white people that's against reparation. But then after sitting back watching the trillions of dollars that Joe Biden is just giving away to foreigners, $1 trillion that Joe Biden is spending on illegal immigrants. He's talking about giving illegal immigrants reparations. They're talking about giving criminals that's released from prison reparation. Cuomo is working on that now, giving illegal immigrants reparations and criminals, people that committed crimes, they're giving them reparation. Is this what democracy looks like? Is democracy supporting illegal immigration and supporting prisoners, people that murdered your loved ones, people that raped your loved ones or even raped you, dudes that's behind prison and females that's behind prison for robbing and murdering? But yet they deserve reparations. But when Black Americans speak on reparation, they're told to get over it. And they're told that there's no way of proving that their ancestors were in captivity. Well, riddle me this. How did we get our last names? If you say that the Black Americans are from Africa, why don't Black Americans have African names? Where did our names come from? Riddle me this. How did the so-called Black Americans get to America if they're from Africa? I'm sure you have immigration documentation on the so-called Black Americans coming here on their free will and accord. I'm sure you have that information. Riddle me this. Where would you say Black Americans are from? It's sad because there are so many so-called Black Americans that have lost their lives at the hands of other Black Americans. They were taught to hate themselves. They were taught to hate each other. And there are so many black Americans that died at the hands of other black Americans because of slavery. Because of how they were conditioned in captivity. There are so many babies that were aborted. Black American females were convinced to sacrifice their babies through abortion clinics. And Margaret Sanger says that blacks should be exterminated like weeds. Riddle me this. Why are black Americans so uniquely on the bottom than any other race or nationality? Why is the crime rate in black communities much higher than any other communities? Can you tell me that? It's all the result of slavery. Now, I hear so many people talk on democracy and how democracy there's a threat to democracy. What exactly is democracy? Because if we look back in history, it was the Democrats that instituted slavery. It was the Democrats that formed the KKK. But how did democracy or the Democrat Party ever benefit black people? When were there ever justice for the so-called black Americans? I'll wait for that. When did democracy ever benefit black people? But we hear them say that there's a threat to democracy, so now they feel they have to pack the courts. Well, let me ask you this question, and I'll get to the video. When did the courts ever benefit black people? When did it ever display justice to the so-called black Americans? We have so many young black men and women that were incarcerated, went through the court systems, and was found guilty. And now we have so many young black men, which are no longer young, now being released from prison because it's now proven that they were innocent. And they give them a couple of $1 million and think that's okay, but a great portion of their life is gone. All of this is a result of yesterday. We're living the results of yesterday, slavery, today. But yet, when we speak reparations, you have so many white people and now black people that speak out against it. But yet, you agree and support illegal immigrants receiving trillions of dollars. You agree with foreign nations that hate America. You agree with them receiving reparations or receiving trillions of taxpayers' dollars. I just posted an article about a transgender that's on death row, that's got life in prison, and how tax dollars are paying for his transition. So is that democracy? Is democracy denying black people due reparations? I'm for reparations. At one time, I was somewhat against it. Not really against it, but I just didn't think it was possible. But now, after sitting back watching Joe Biden just give away trillions of dollars, that money could go towards black American. the descendants of slavery and Native Americans. Now, Native Americans have gotten a plot of land, which the white man is now controlling that, or trying to control it. But anyway, I'm going to let you listen to Cori Bush, and I agree with her. And there's not too often I agree with Democrats. But I want you to listen to what Cori Bush has to say about reparation. And I felt her pain, man. I felt what she had to say. Check it out.
Opportunity to speak. First of all, I will say that we are not children. So telling folks that have endured something that you have never endured to stop anything is absolutely uncalled for. The systems of trauma caused by the enslavement of black people in this country, it's not history. Those systems are ongoing and they are vicious. That trauma, science tells us, if you're talking about science, is intergenerational. The pain endured by our ancestors lives in our DNA. Look it up. In the stories we know about the horrors faced by enslaved black people of African descent and their families. In the material world we live in, where descendants of people who were enslaved endure historic levels of inequity. The painful reality is slavery isn't just a Southern problem, it's an American problem. I'm not from the South. I'm from Missouri, a former Midwestern slave state. St. Louis, my district, was the very place where Dred Scott, a free man, was denied the fullness of his humanity because he was black. St. Louis has been the site of auction blocks and slave patrols, broken people, broken families, broken communities, and to this day, we continue to suffer in slavery by another name. We are over-criminalized still, over-policed still. We are under-resourced. Some want us to believe that slavery is a long past history, but its vestiges are alive today, generation after generation, in black communities all across this country. If we removed the impact of every single dollar garnered from slavery, every bale of cotton, every pound of tobacco they harvested that you actually benefit from, where would this country be? Who would have these buildings we can now sit in so comfortably in a building that some of you are seated in right now? And to the Republicans who are against this legislation, how dare you? How dare your nearly all-white panel spend so much energy and abuse your power to deny justice for the descendants of one of the most egregious atrocities in the history of the world. You will not deny our families stories of being separated, sold, because I got that story, sold, I got that story, raped, I got that story, lynched, I got that story in my family, and beaten into submission, I got that story in my family, and not just me, so many other black Americans. So how dare you? Some of my colleagues are trying to argue that the South is economically impoverished and therefore could not have benefited from slavery. But that is not only disingenuous, it is outright wrong. The entire country benefited from slavery. The North took the rich harvests from the South and made thread that was then exported across the world. The South harvested cotton that made the United States one of the most prolific exporters of cotton. Come on now, talk about the history. Us as lawmakers working in this chamber are benefiting from the free labor that built this very capital. And so I'm going to ask you, unless you can come with those stories about what happened, the lynchings and all that your family members went through, unless you can talk about those stories of rape, unless you can talk about those stories of how your folks worked and did not receive the wage, your folks, because let me say this, we're not talking about folks that lived around the corner. We're talking about folks that were stolen from their actual land, lost their culture, lost their languages, lost their stories, were separated from their families, all to work for ancestors of folks that look like some of these folks today that are on this call that are opposing this. So let me remind you, you have no idea what that is like. You don't know what that's like, but the least that you can do is support research. Thank you.
What I find interesting, and thank you, Cori Bush, for this. I don't even know what to say. She said it all. There's really not much I can say. But I agree with everything she says. But what I find interesting is that she only received 6 thumbs up, which includes mine, and 41 thumbs down. But yet these same people that thumbed down this video are some of the same people that's always talking about how democracy is being threatened and how democracy this and democracy that and democracy, but democracy does not include black Americans. The so-called democracy today is the modern day Jim Crow. Democracy keeps blacks on the bottom. And it's sad because black Americans are so conditioned that they continue to support the same political party that put them in the position they're in today. Killing each other, hating each other, black on black violence and crime, abortion, teenage pregnancy, drugs in our communities. And that's not even the beginning. It's all a result of slavery, which they're denying you reparation. They think so low of black Americans that they would rather give that money, trillions of dollars, not millions, not billions, but trillions of dollars. They'd rather give trillions of dollars to foreign nations, illegal immigrants. Look at the cost that the taxpayers have to pay for these to house and to give medical care to these illegal immigrants that cross the borders illegally. You go and violate someone's property, cross over a line, and I guarantee you will be brought up on charges for trespassing. They would arrest you for trespassing. But yet you have terrorists and illegal immigrants crossing the border, and they give them a place to stay. They give them education. Your kids now have to receive education at home behind a video camera, and the illegal immigrants have face-to-face teachers. And it's all paid for by tax dollars, but it's okay. The Democrats are down with that. Everybody supports that. But when you talk reparations for black people, so-called black people, and that's another thing too. So-called black people are referred to black people or African Americans. There's no such thing as an African American. There's no such thing as an Afro American. And there's no such thing as a Negro. Everybody else is identified by their homeland. Asians, Italians. But yet when it comes to the so-called black Americans, they're black. So I'm for reparations. And just like Joe Biden is now giving that money, and look at the damage. Look at how they use black Americans as attack dogs to tear up stuff, to burn down things. And black Americans should be ashamed of themselves for allowing them to use you like that. When they want something done, you become their hitman, their attack dog, and you get nothing in return. That black female that had Black Lives Matter spent over $3 billion or $3 million in real estate for keeping you guys in check. And look at the damage they're doing now in other states. Black Lives Matter. That's how she became rich. So it's sad. It upsets me, and you know what? We're limited to what we can do. We can only say so much. And YouTube look at this as being dangerous because black people, according to them, you need to stay in your place. And anyone that's not in their place, they remove from social media. And it's sad because black people are allowing themselves to be used to destroy things. You've become the Democrats' devil, going up and down the earth, seeking whom you may devour. That's the only thing black Americans are good for, is slaving on the plantation. And right now you're still slaving on the plantation by destroying property for the Democrats to keep them in power. But like I mentioned before, the Democrats, when they're done with you, there will be bloodshed. There will be a bloodbath. And your blood will be in the street. Because you allow them to use you for their political agenda. And they don't even speak about what's needed in your communities. Their concern is the illegal immigrants. I'm going to repeat that. Their main concern is the illegal immigrants, not Americans, and definitely not so-called black Americans. And yes, I keep saying so-called black Americans, because they're not black and they're not Americans. So, feedback, tell me what you think. This video might be removed as well from YouTube, but that's okay. I'm used to it. That's the nature of the beast. But black Americans need to stop allowing them to use you for destruction. That's the only thing black Americans are good for, is to tear up mess. And then once you tear it up and just think for a moment. These are major corporations. These are big businesses that's allowing you to destroy them, to destroy their mess. Because they're going to collect that insurance pay. This is a huge heist right here. An insurance heist. You destroy their property. They got insurance. They take care of it. And guess what? That's their excuse for removing their businesses from your communities. And now you're going to have to transport from your community out to the suburbs to shop. Because the Democrat demons, or the attack dogs, destroyed the businesses in your community. They weren't just going to pack up and leave, because that cost them money. But if you go in there and destroy it, then the insurance will cover that. And they'll just move to some other place. Put that money in another area. And now your community is left high and dry. And who do you have left to shop? Black businesses, which aren't doing too well because blacks don't support blacks because of slavery. They were taught to hate themselves. They were taught and conditioned not to support each other. So feedback, tell me what you think. Until next time, I'm fearless.